The Israeli Supreme Court has struck down a significant section of the government's controversial judicial reforms. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu pushed through the changes that limited the powers of judges to overturn government decisions. The plans were highly unpopular and prompted massive nationwide protests last year. Let's go straight to Jerusalem for more from journalist Sami Sokol. People took to the streets for months against this reform. How surprising was the court's decision?
Well, I think in the public in general, people have not been focusing on these questions right now, since the war has kind of like overtaken everything. And the focus has been, of course, on what's happening with the security and so forth. But the legal experts, they knew that this would be coming, and they expected this to come now at this time. And in fact, they also saying that this is the outcome shows that the Supreme Court listened to the public, and the public also gave the Supreme Court the kind of confidence to face Netanyahu and Yariv Levin, the Justice Minister, in their efforts to reform the judiciary in Israel.
That's quite interesting. What about the political reaction today then?
Well, as expected, the Likud, the party in power in Israel, they're very upset. They're saying that this is something that cannot happen in the time of war. There should have been unity. The Minister of Justice himself, Yariv Levin, attacked the Supreme Court again, linking it to the war, again saying that this is not the time. And on the other hand, Benny Gantz, who is now in the polls the most popular politician, he's saying that we should respect the Supreme Court and its decision. But he also said that there are no winners and losers, in a kind of an attempt to show unity and to show that the important thing now is the war in Gaza.
Are there really no winners and no losers? What's it mean for Netanyahu and his government?
Well, this is a big blow to Netanyahu, a big blow to his attempt for this judicial overall, this attempt to weaken the justice in Israel. And in the reality, there's not going to be any change because basically the Supreme Court has said that Netanyahu cannot make these changes. Netanyahu has vowed not to do these changes during the war. So it's kind of like freezing the existing situation. But politically, it's yet another defeat to Netanyahu.
But where does this leave his own corruption cases? Okay,
so his trial is ongoing. It has not ended. If there would have been an attempt to remove the Attorney General so as to cancel his trial, this is something that experts have been talking about, that possibility that Netanyahu would try and do that. Well, now the Supreme Court has made it very clear that there are limits, and this would have been an unreasonable decision, and that the government and the ministers, they have to act in reasonability. And if not, the Supreme Court has its power to block them.
You heard from journalist Sami Sokol. Thank you very much for chiming in there from Jerusalem. Well, Israel's military says the conflict with Hamas, which many countries designate a terrorist organisation, will probably continue throughout 2024. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has said Israel aims to control Gaza's border with Egypt. At the same time, tensions on its northern border with Lebanon are rising, fueling fears of a second front opening. DW correspondent Jan-Philipp Schultz is in northern Israel, close to the border with Lebanon. We asked him how tense the situation is.
The situation here in the border region is certainly very tense. The hills that you can see behind me are already part of Lebanon, and people here say that there are many fighters of the Iranian-backed Hezbollah militia in those hills. And they also say that the rocket attacks are so close that you usually even you hear the hit before you hear any air raid alerts. So yes, a very tense situation here. And, since the beginning of the war, there have been hostilities in the region, but the fighting has certainly increased in the past days here. And a lot of people fear that it could further escalate. Prime Minister Netanyahu also said that Israel could take things in its own hands if there is not more international pressure on Lebanon. And of course, eyes of the whole international community are on this region, because a lot of people fear that a wider escalation of the conflict could have its origin exactly here in the border region.
Jan-Philipp Schultz on the Israeli-Lebanese border.